Well, guys, I'm
Thank you.
sorry to interrupt the conversation, but I've just for to finish off the rest of the session, we can come back and have further questions later. But I really want to just try to align what we've heard from Tim to what we have in the big framework and just draw this together there. Um, I've got a bit of content just to whiz through. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I think most people know what the big framework is, but hopefully just flashing these images up will allow us to connect back with what Tim's been talking about. I've heard at a high level, I've heard basically a richness to um, uh, engaging boards with what the mission critical objectives are, what the purpose is that's driving that, and then to develop the process which embellishes the underpinnings and detail for that. What we're talk so that we'd absolutely rely on that in an integrated governance scenario. So that all of that capability and that attitude and that stakeholder engagement is absolutely essential. But just refreshing back to what we talk about with Biggs, I think this really aligns well. One of the earliest set of images in the big stuff is that our organizations are owners or shareholders and clear purpose and goals. There's a massive assumption that we are at a high level coping with impositions. We're dealing with emergent matters, opportunities, and threats, and we're doing that within the current state of our organization, which gives us a vision for for the options for our future state. So again, there's a lot of capture that was. I mean, I think that this is probably covered in Tim's early steps in the process he laid out. But we're then talking about the production development of strategic plan, which again, at some point has to meet the constraints that we have as an organization in terms of funding, resources, technology, whatever it is, from which we can then develop what our objectives are. Whether these are some of these may be mission critical, but they may not. But we certainly have to look at the risk situation in the drivers that are leading to our vision, as well as to the objectives that we've defined that Tim has been talking about. So I think there's really close alignment there. And I think what Tim's been talking about is producing a lot more color and depth to what this high level framework suggests. What's your view on that, Tim? Would you concur with that?
Oh, absolutely. The whole, as I started out my presentation, back in I, s- I did 3 years of traditional internal auditing and then I went to management. And when I went to management, I concluded the world needs strong first line risk management. Big is talking about stronger first line risk management. It may not look exactly like the methodology but the philosophy of management, the piece that I put a lot of emphasis on is big may generate and CEOs may be comfortable knowing what big generates, but they not be willing to tell the board. So sometimes the CEO, though, they'll know that if a methodology like big is going to produce data that they don't want the board to know, it's better that it never see the light of day. Hence, better not to have a process like big, because then the CEO won't have to intervene and stop data because a logical board would say, I see you have a framework around the strategic planning and execution process. Give us a full report on it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to work.
This week we've chatted a couple of times, Tim, and I've cried into my cup of tea every time we finish the conversation on that subject. But just moving on again, this is just a detailed picture. Okay, so we've done it at the high level. We've then got to make it work through organization, haven't we? We haven't got to cascade it. We've got to delegate. We've got to secure accountability. We've got to prioritize. We've got to balance resources, and we've got to get these mission critical objectives through the organization and in balance with what everyone else is doing. So there's a challenge to actually not only get the MCOs driven, whether they are strategic or value preservation objectives. We've got to get those through the organisation and in balance. We've got to deploy our resources, leadership, time, and funds across everything that we need to do. So I guess that this is the cascade is a challenge. and the understanding of where the allocations have been made is a challenge. So the execution is innately therefore going to be a massive challenge. Um, and you focus on that point of accountability. Well, accountability is a central aspect to big, and the idea is that in big, and I think this resonates with OCRUM very closely, that for every objective, whether it's a mission critical one or not, that we have some kind of priority for that objective and a related business case, which we have somebody accountable for it who has authority who is then able to engage with stakeholders, to plan, to manage risk, to manage issues, to pull in funds and resources, and actually execute on that. I think this is a huge overlap with what you describe in OCRUM, and I think what we're doing with Big is provide the operational mechanics to achieve what you're stipulating. How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, no, I mean, if you stop and just keep going back to the fundamentals, the ISO definition is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. So when we look at big from 30,000 feet, it's a process that's trying to operationalize the management of the effect of uncertainty on objectives. And whether it
Yeah,
looks exactly like OCRUM or not, it's more important though, is it in fact doing a better job managing uncertainty that important objectives will be achieved? And although I've used the term mission critical, which is at the entity level, the methodology is intended to be used wherever a manager who owns responsibility for an objective that wants to increase the likelihood they'll achieve it. Maybe
yeah,
it doesn't rise to the level of importance that the board needs to know what that manager's doing,
yeah,
but the methodology can be used on any end result somebody is accountable for that somebody thinks is important enough to warrant a more structured process than just kind of winging it. And that's really what we're talking about. And as people around the world learn about what I'm doing, a lot of times they're doing parallel things, different words, different terms, sometimes driven by different reasons and motivations. But fundamentally, this is about consciously deciding, is executing our strategy important enough that we should use a more structured, rigorous process to
yeah.
increase the likelihood we'll execute? And that's the mantra. So, I learned a long time ago not to get too territorial and say, well, no, it's not exactly like OCRUM because it's different here, here, and here. Okay, but that's fine. If the people that created the process are passionate and making it work and it's accomplishing the end result of increasing the likelihood objectives will be achieved with an acceptable level of uncertainty. And
That's
that's where
yeah,
sometimes the divergence happens. It may be increasing likelihood in the minds of the management, but is there a level of risk that management may not be aware of, or if they're aware of it, they don't want to talk about it with the CEO and or the board? And that's one of the distinguishing characteristics. Our methodology says you have to be willing, management can take any level of risk and uncertainty it wants, subject to only one caveat. They have to be prepared to share that state of uncertainty with the CEO and the board.
yeah.
And that's
Completely
the
agreed.
caveat. Management is paid to take the risks. So, but that's fine, but they're not paid to take the risks and silently conceal the true position from senior management and or the board.
No, because they're accountable. If empowerment means that you get trust, you get the leadership time, funds, and resources, but in return for that, you're accountable. So
Yeah,
you have to be held to account.
you'll get a
And
kick out of this, David. The number one defense of D&O policies is the board says it's not our fault, we didn't know. I'm not joking. That is the
yeah,
number one when things go badly wrong. The boards are saying we didn't know. So we shouldn't be held accountable because we didn't know. Now, what the courts are saying is, well, wait a minute. You're also accountable for making sure there's an information system that
Yeah.
provides you with the information. Now, what I'm telling you is US jurisprudence. The UK may not have the same set of case law on board fiduciary duty. So you need to go to the British common law. What is the board's fiduciary duty of care? And at what point has the board breached that minimum level of duty of care and that they should be personally held liable? Hence, the D&O insurance has to come in. Like, be very clear. The Wells Fargo case, I have it on good information. The defense fees alone for the chief risk officer and two chief audit executives were $100 million. I'm talking about the settlements in the Wells Fargo case are in the many, many billions of dollars. And the board's defense, we had no idea this was going on for 15 years.
It's absolutely abysmal, isn't it? I mean, so if we are to I won't dwell on this, but if this makes sense and if this is a sensible model to get from your drivers to what you're going to do, and you recognize that there are challenges in getting that cascaded, the fundamental aspect to that is establishing accountability, but then also connecting that up and mapping how that all works and how you get from your accountable points to that board level summary. This is the game set, the mindset with the big stuff is agree your objectives, delegate them to point of accountability, connect it all back up again,
Yeah.
like you
Oh, David,
avoid,
don't
yeah,
move for a second. Just go back to the one you're on. Here's
yeah,
my point of suggestion. You see the small little one that says board down in the bottom right? That should be
yes,
huge and it should be right up above all of this.
yeah. That's a key. So I kind of use the word board or organization.
Yeah,
So
it's kind of subordinating the information flow that we promote, which is the board has a fiduciary duty to oversee the likelihood of achieving things. And it needs to be front and center as the emphasis. However, what I say, and I just finished training 20 plus people in South Africa yesterday, 6 a.m. and then 5 a.m. in the morning on Monday. I said, you cannot implement mission critical, objective centric governance in a company that has don't tell, don't ask governance syndrome.
yeah.
That's it.
So this
I
this
may
this
say that
whole yeah,
if
yeah.
the board doesn't want and demand the kind of information that we're talking about, and the CEO doesn't want that board to have it, you're just committing career suicide, bringing in methodologies, whether they're called big or whether they're called OCRUM or whether they're called, if they're going to produce data that CEO doesn't want going to the board, you better figure out how a way you can keep it secret only to him or her.
Yeah.
And that's not easy in a world of discovery where in a litigation situation where everything goes bad, you use AI and you cover every single email that's been listed for 5 years and you dig out how much people knew about what, and then you use it in the proceedings.
Well, there's that's a very important point, isn't it? It's like if we're if it's I guess it's not just whether the board has don't ask, don't tell, but it's whether all of these intermediate layers have that as well. So you're just escalating the size of the challenge, and the further size of the challenge where information flows at the moment are often about sending this spreadsheet or sending that PowerPoint, and the culture isn't necessarily about sharing information. That's a big concept, and we don't necessarily have an architecture to deliver the information that we have. These are to my mind. Can we get away from the send? Can we get onto share? And can we build capability to enable that to happen? Um, and but lastly, just to wrap up, we I guess there's we can maybe just record something discussing this. We're kind of out of time, but the mindset from my point of view is that there's lots of aspects to how we need to function as a business. Essentially, we need to nail our purpose and strategy. We need to make sure we're doing things the right way and doing things legally. We need to be able to change, develop our assets and products, operate as an organization. And there are all kinds of bodies of knowledge that can advise us on this kind of stuff. This is my judgment, Tim. I might have got this wrong, but to me, the OCRUM body of knowledge is rich and sophisticated and kind of sits somewhere between governance, risk and compliance, and purpose and strategy. It's a huge body of knowledge that starts from that perspective and then drives what needs to happen through the organization. So that, and where the big framework I think is, it's really like literally is that framework. It's kind of empty. And what I'd like to do with an organization is not try and tell it what to do from what the big box says, but color it in from the wisdom from people like yourself and owners of wisdom for the organization. I've not shown you that diagram before. How does that resonate with you? Is it kind of
Well,
close?
the piece that I haven't stressed is the definition. I've written multiple articles and posts on this, is when I propose what I believe and what my book proposes should be the purpose of the board, it starts with the board is responsible for overseeing the entity's purpose,
Yeah,
comma, and supporting mission critical objectives and the risk uncertainty of achieving them at a level of risk uncertainty that's acceptable to the board. So my book proposes that as okay, so then I say, all right, I'm good if the board says no, that's not what we think we're here for. Fair enough. Define what you're there for. They're paid quite a lot of money, and I've had some of my buddies have made tens of millions of dollars in stock option wins sitting on boards. So that they get paid in many companies quite well. So the question is what do they think? So in OCRUM, the whole notion of what when you go about populating the mission, the objectives register with mission critical objectives, one of the starting points is agreeing the purpose of the entity with the executive and the board. So it overlaps all of those things in terms of ISO 37K. I like ISO products, but my experience is most of the world doesn't give a shit about them. So that the problem is that they have a lot of good things in them, and 37,000 is a nice piece of work. There's a lot of effort goes into those. I know people that sit on those technical committees. The piece that I fault them for is just clarity. Like, let's start with A. What does ISO define as the purpose of governance? Full stop. What does ISO define as the purpose of the board? Full stop. Now let's start talking about frameworks that would help support that agreed purpose. And if they have to, if the standard needs to say, okay, agree the purpose of governance and agree the purpose of the board, check that it's aligned with the law, and then make sure that all of the board's activities are aligned with whatever that stated purpose is. Fair enough. I'm good with that. But they're not doing that either. So there's a lot of politics goes into the ISO processes. You have 100 countries in the world arguing over what the word should be in anything.
yeah,
Uh, there is the notion of the loudest voices sometimes are the ones that are heard. And there's a huge tendency to protect status quo. So ISO, when they wrote 31,000, they defined the word risk as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. But listen to this. The primary visual of the ISO 31,000 risk management process does not use the word risk anywhere in the entire overview diagram. So how did the ISO 31,000 technical committee write a whole policy on risk management that does not describe at all figuring out which objectives are worth assessing the effect of uncertainty on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they haven't done that because the authors wanted to defend risk list ERM. So the authors of 31,000 wanted to write it in as ambiguous a way that the majority of companies in the world that publish risk registers and risk heat maps can still say they're aligned with it.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
some nasty politics at work here.
I've been on a couple of those review sessions, and a lot of keen people, but it's yeah, I'm not an insider. But anyone else? I've kind of Tim's presented to us the OCRUM reason why and the introduction to it, and there are links we can share to the detail. I've kind of tried to say, well, to me the big framework is a shell, and goodness gracious, the OCRUM um, uh, methodology, the OCRUM content fills, it colours a heck of a lot of this. And there are maybe some bits it doesn't delve into quite so much, but crikey, if we're looking to help an organization improve its strategy delivery with more, to achieve more outcomes with less with acceptable risk in balance with everything it wants to do, that there's a number of publications we can draw on, but Okram and Big are two of the central ones I think that I would certainly take to an organization. What does everyone else have to say? What do you guys think? Um, Anyone got any observations they want to make or questions they want to raise from me and Tim?
I think it's been really interesting. As usual, it's you if you put one company in, it's easy to fill it in. If you want two in, then you can have something different, and three, you got three, and it just gets bigger and bigger. So the problem with all of these frameworks is that in some ways they're too prescriptive, and they have their own elements into it. Like you, I have a very simple one: Apex, assess, prioritize, execute, expand. But that's aimed at AI pilots.
Well, it's a framework. I guess you look at the organization as to where it is and what its
Mm,
aspirations are, and then you take the best out of the capabilities that are available to you. And
correct.